Hey guys, today we're learning about isosceles triangles. And so an isosceles triangle, as you already know, is a triangle with two sides that are congruent. So we mark this with these tick marks. It just means they're the same length. So for instance, if this side is 7, that means this side is 7. But there's something else we also know about isosceles triangles, and that is that if I have two sides that are congruent, the two angles across from those sides are also congruent. So for instance, this side here, the angle across from it is this one. And this side here, the angle across from it is this one. Which means if this angle is 40 degrees, then this angle is 40 degrees. So just nice to know about a triangle. Also, just in case you forgot it, the sum of the angles in a triangle is 180. Okay, that will be important later. So if I was to add up all the angles in a triangle, it will always be 180. So now that we know a couple of facts about an isosceles triangle, let's do a few examples. So I've done a couple examples here. Please ignore my scribble. So here I have a triangle. It tells me that two of my angles match. Well, if two of my angles match, that means the opposite sides also match. So the side opposite this angle is 3x plus 5, and the side opposite this angle is 17. So because I know it's an isosceles triangle, I know that the 3x plus 5 side must be the same length as my 17 side. So I can do this by setting them equal. Now I just need to solve for x. Whenever I'm solving for x, always do the farthest thing from x first. In that case, it is this 5. The opposite of a plus 5 is a minus 5. Do that to both sides. So I have 3x equals 12. And then to get x by itself, I need to divide by 3. So x is 4. In our next example, I also know this is an isosceles triangle because of these tick marks. So these tick marks mean my sides are the same. But it also means that my base angles are the same. The angles across from the sides that are equal. So if this angle is x and it's across from one side, the other side, the angle across from it, must also be the same. So it must also be x. Now, I have all three angles in my triangle, and we learned earlier that the sum of the angles in a triangle is 180. So I can add all of these up and say that x plus 70 must be 180. You add up all the angles, it has to be 180. Well, x plus x makes 2x. Now, if I want to solve for x, I need to subtract this 70. So 2x equals 110. When I divide by 2, x is 55. Now in our last example, well, the last one on this page, there's one more. Okay, this one requires us to use a little bit more. I know that this angle is 50, and I know that these two angles are the same because they're the ones across from my congruent sides, but I don't know what those are. Okay. Now, because x is already being used, let's just call them y. So this one's y, and that one's y. Now, there's a way for me to find this. I can do it just like I did the other one and say I have 2y plus 50 equals 180. So So that's just me saying I have y plus 50, so 2y's plus 50 equals 180. When I subtract the 50, I get 2y equals 130. And then when I divide by 2, I know that y is 65. Now, that's great that y is 65, but that's not what it was originally asking for. Originally it was asking for x. So, to get x, if you look right here, x and y, those are supplementary angles. Supplementary meaning they form a straight line. So since these angles form a straight line, that means they equal 180. So if I know that y is 65 and x plus y has to be 180, I could do 180 minus 65, and it would give me x. So then I have x equals 115. Okay, our last example is a little bit bigger. It looks like this. So in this example, I have two different isosceles triangles. Notice this triangle has one tick mark on each congruent side, and this triangle has two, which means they're not necessarily the same. But we can still figure it out. So, looking around, the only information I am absolutely sure about is this 120. So that means I need to start here. Now, based on this 120 and this angle here are supplementary, which means they make 180. So if 120 plus whatever this number is 180, that means this number has to be 60. Excuse me. Now, if I know that this one's 60, these two have to be the same. Reason is because they're opposite of the congruent angles. So if I do 180 minus 60, it gives me 120. But I have two of these, so if I divide it by 2, I know that each one of these, 120 divided by 2, is 60. So each of these are 60, which means that's actually an equilateral triangle. Okay? So if they're all 60, that helps me get that triangle. Now I can move to this triangle. If you notice, 60 and this one are vertical angles. Vertical angles face each other, and they're also the same. So if this one's 60, this one is 60. And likewise, because this is an isosceles triangle, if this one's 60, this one's 60. And then 60 and my x are vertical angles, which means x equals 60. Okay, it just happened to be that way, that they were all 60. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes they're different. But in this case, that's the way it was.